Hey there's Perch. Talking about Superman for a minute. So Superman, as a character, I think we have mentioned this before. People say he's really hard to write. I did a video about the Fantastic Four, so this one more about Superman. I don't think Superman is that difficult to write. Although within the industry, that's the narrative. That's the commonly held belief is that Superman as a title is really rough and it's just hard to write the perfect hero. And I think the people who struggle to write Superman, the trap is in exactly what I just said. If you view him as the perfect hero, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time writing Superman because I think that fails to get who and what and how Superman is. So I think if you look at Superman as a character, you obviously have somebody, lots of powers, super powered up, flight, heat vision. He's kind of got almost all the powers except mental, psychic powers, and even there, there's at least some evidence he can control minds. Or the 60s and 70s were a hilarious time for Superman. Really, no, sorry, that's 60s. Those comics were that crazy. Um, but anyway, so I think that we've seen lots of writers do Superman very well, though, and I really Tomasi I think does an excellent Superman. And I think the introduction of his family, particularly kind of, an established married close relationship with Lois, and even more importantly, John, his son, I think that the introduction of those two elements were like a huge gift to any writer who was going to take on Superman, which is all the more confusing a little bit why Bendis wanted to. I don't know. It feels like he came on the comic and was like, I don't really know what to do with John, so we're going to kind of put him over here, and we're going to put a lot of focus on building up Lois as a kind of self-sustaining, powerful woman. I want to have, I'm going to make Lois the new Jessica Jones, if you will, for DC. And I'm confused by that pitch a little bit, and I'm sure that's not the pitch. I mean, we've had the stories he's been writing it of, John off with. Kal-El and kind of that whole craziness there. So it's not like John was erased from the comics. He was erased from one of them, but he's it's clear. I mean, it's a weird pitch. It's an awkward pitch, I think, to have John in this situation and to do this stuff with Lois. I often think, there's this desire in a lot of comics to say, hey, we want to make, this female character a strong, not necessarily independent, but we want to make sure this character is elevated. And where Lois is concerned, I often feel it's a case of like show don't tell, in the sense that she is a strong character. She is fully formed. I'm kind of curious. Was anyone kind of marching around thinking Lois was kind of a useless prop of a character? I don't know. I don't think anyone thought that. So why, by putting this emphasis on like, no, we're going to build her up. I mean, do you need to? I, I think, I think she's there now. I think she was there during Tomasi's run, during some of the books that Jurgens wrote. I mean, I, I don't know who these people are who are kind of walking around going, oh, Lois is just a stupid dame who's always getting in trouble and Superman has to save her. I mean, we haven't seen that Lois in 20 years more. I don't know. So I think that Lois is, anyway, I think that's a case of just like leave it alone and just have her doing, badass stuff in badass situations and call it a day. I think, the extra emphasis it almost has a reverse effect where you're like, why are you trying so hard with this character? I don't get it. But this is about Superman. I think, I'll point also to, and I've mentioned on Twitter, the recent Justice League 25 by Snyder. That that couldn't have been I mean, just perfect view of Superman, in terms of in just a few short pages. And this is why, I'll say it again, you don't need 6 issues of decompressed storytelling to have a great Superman moment. You can have it in like 3 pages. So what is accomplished? Basically, in this issue, Superman is trapped in the sixth dimension, or well, that's not that's not doing it justice. Snyder likes to throw a lot of concepts at the page, and for recappers, it's a hell of a time to kind of summarize that up quickly. You just got to kind of read it. But Superman basically is trapped in this dimension, no sun. He is dying. His body is withering. Really nice kind of ode to Dark Knight Returns in terms of the shape and positioning. I'm sure the artist was thinking that, where Superman is kind of frail and withering away. And Batman gives him a back door, basically an escape out with several suns, and Superman kind of calling upon his inner strength. And this is where I think Snyder really gets Superman, and where Superman is not that hard a character to write if you just remember the right things. So Superman calls upon his inner strength. His inner strength is, never give up, and more importantly, both his family from when he was a child, meaning Jonathan Kent and kind of the lessons that were taught to him, and his new family, meaning Lois and John. And he's able to rally himself. He's able to kind of pick up that strength. I think one of the interesting takes on Superman is, and should be, that you've got this really strong, near perfect superhero character. That's a very hard burden to live up to. That he's always working under a big kind of big barrier that he's got to overcome, and he's got the powers to overcome it. But just having those powers is not enough. You can have all the strength and all the rest. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to overcome, your own doubt or the struggle. And so you have to have this inner bravery, this inner power. And that's the interesting hook of Superman, is like, how does a near perfect superhero keep getting up day after day and going to tackle these unstoppable threats and continue to be able to wield his power effectively. It's kind of a magnified great power, great responsibility kind of thing. He has great power. He puts great responsibility on himself, and that's a weight that he has to find ways to overcome. And the introduction to his family, why I say it's such a gift to new and current Superman writers, is that this is an aspect of Superman's life where he's got people who support him, that are within his network, so to speak, of characters that allows him to reach in and find this strength within himself. The Snyder issue is great. I mean, you got Superman kind of thinking about the lessons he was taught when he was a child, and how that relates to kind of the importance of sticking with something, the importance of trying to light the match. You have heat vision; you could do it easily, but it's important to not just rely on those tools, but perseverance. Perseverance that sometimes things get bleak and you have to find your way anyway. And that a Superman who fully relies on his powers is probably a villain. So this is a Superman who has to find ways to succeed, regardless or in spite of his powers. And I think it's a good take on Superman. And listen, Tomasi did this. Snyder, as I mentioned, did this with Justice League 25. This is a good Superman. It gives you, it gives you, in the weirdest way, it gives you a relatable Superman. It gives you a Superman that isn't so alien and foreign, and can, you want to cheer him on. If the hero is just unstoppable and never really struggles with anything and doesn't have any kind of internal lift or motivation, then why cheer for them? It doesn't matter. I mean, the hero is just going to overcome anyway. So that's the interesting bit about Superman. I think there's been great Superman runs throughout the years. I think you can kind of see a writer or creator come on Superman, and are they going to tap into that kind of bigger aspect of Superman's personality, or are they going to want to kind of deconstruct Superman? I'm always wary of writers who come on to Superman. The first thing they want to do is like, all right, we're going to make a threat that's even more powerful than Superman. So now he's got big, strong superpowers, but there's a villain with also big, strong superpowers. And how is Superman going to punch his way out of this one? So that's a bad take. That's just kind of arms race of powers. I don't think that goes anywhere good. But the other is where they come in and are like, okay, we're going to have to find a way to take away some of his powers because it's too hard to write this story with, with all these capabilities. So, he's going to get infected with green kryptonite or be forced to wear, a kryptonite tie that is going to hamper him in some way, or just those takes are less interesting. I think you've got a lot to play with the character of Superman that you have. But anyway, that's kind of my view on him. Uh, I think there's a lot of stories about Superman left to be told, and I think another writer I think that got it right is Grant Morrison with All Star Superman with Frank Quitely. I think that was a really good example of we have a Superman. Now there, Morrison was doing what I just said. I don't particularly care for. He was basically Superman is dying, or there's some impending threat to Superman. But if you read that series, it is all about Superman finding what's within himself, using his powers, certainly fighting big threats, big villains, but also, or more importantly, looking within himself for that inspiration, for um, that peace that allows him to carry the responsibility he's put on himself. So that's I think a really good series. There's been plenty of good Superman stories. I'm always a little surprised when I meet up with creators or go to a con and people are kind of lament going on to Superman because that was so hard to write this character. I disagree. I think there's plenty of reasonable stories, and the reality is if Scott Snyder can whip out one of the best Superman moments we've seen in the last 5 years in I mean there's several stories in that arc, but in 6 pages, if he can just hit the nail right on the head about what makes a good Superman, it shouldn't be that hard. And it wasn't even in a Superman book; it was in Justice League. So I think that you know, ignoring Jonathan Kent, ignoring the son, kind of breaking up the family, all that kind of stuff. It's just it's cheap writing. It's writing that it just I think it just reinforces that the writer doesn't understand the character well, or feels daunted by how powerful the character is. So there you go. That's my opinion. What do you think? Leave some comments below. Would love to hear what you think of Superman. What's your favorite Superman story? Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification. Please make sure you're still subscribed. Things tend to happen in wacky YouTube land. Follow me at Comic Perch on Twitter, and thanks for listening.